Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting insight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And I am Dan Sams.
And you've tuned in for what promises to be a most interesting From Concealment podcast.
Well, we got special things to talk about today, man.
We do. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. In fact, this is the episode I have been telling Dan about all month, saying, we're not going to do this one live on Facebook. I'm going to give you the authority to bounce the episode if you feel it's inappropriate. And I figure the pastor is the best one that should decide if this is an inappropriate episode or not.
I don't know, man. You can't always trust me to be as pastoral as some might expect me to be.
Let me just put it like this for everybody. I'm going to keep this clean. However, if you're listening to this podcast with kids, I would encourage you to not listen to it with kids.
There you go. Yeah.
I would encourage you to put this on hold, come back to it a little bit later when the kids aren't around.
Yeah.
And then listen to the episode, because we got some things that we're going to discuss as it pertains to the carnivore diet, which I'm finishing up. Today is technically day 30 of the old carnivore diet. And I promised Dan I'd give him a play-by-play. My best friend, Jethro, also happened to be doing the carnivore diet as well. And it's really his story that I'm going to share with everybody.
Yeah.
And so let me just give you kind of the rundown for those of you who are maybe just tuning in to the podcast now. I decided to go on a carnivore diet for 30 days. And the basic structure of the carnivore diet is, if it's an animal product, you eat it. Otherwise, you don't. So pretty much steak, chicken, eggs, those were the three main ingredients of my diet over the last 30 days. I was not a strict carnivore diet person, meaning I put spices on my food. I guess guys who are really into the carnivore diet, they're like, no spices, nothing plant-based. Nice. I like Tabasco sauce. That's technically plant-based. I throw it on there. Every Saturday, my family goes out for ice cream. It's the one dessert a week I allow myself to have. And that's clearly, you can make the argument that ice cream is a byproduct of dairy, but it's not. It's not an animal product. And so, I did do that. I did do that each Saturday. So I actually kept track of everything. Literally exactly how many grams of protein I ate, how many grams of fat I ate. Almost every day was basically no carbs. Though this last week I did have a bunch of protein drinks just because I was like burning a ton of calories and I needed more. And technically the protein drinks do have a few carbs in them. So, I kept track of it all.
Yeah.
And then, of course, ice cream day, that's tons of carbs right there. But I got to tell you, Dan, it is the craziest diet in the world. I can't say anything negative about it. Honestly, I can't.
It's awesome.
One of the biggest complaints that guys who go on the carnivore diet, guys and gals who go on the carnivore diet have, is that the first couple of weeks they experience an explosive diarrhea, shall we say. Now, I didn't experience this the way they do. And the reason for that, and I could actually tell when I was reading books on the carnivore diet, I could tell what was going on. Your body's not used to you consuming that much dietary fat when all you're doing is eating basically animal product. And so your body is not producing enough of the enzyme to break down the fat. And so when the fat starts going through your digestive system, if dietary fat makes it to your large intestine, that's when it's like all bets are off, man. You got to find your way to a bathroom right then. In 2001, I had my gallbladder removed. So my body has kind of already adjusted to the fact that I have to eat, or that it has to produce more bile to break down dietary fats, because I don't have a gallbladder. So gallbladder is where that enzyme is stored until, you know, your stomach needs it, and then it, you know, comes over for the gallbladder. I don't have a gallbladder. So my body already had to compensate for that. Add to that the fact that, as you know, Dan, I've been on a diet for the last year. So I was already, like, again, not following the strict carnivore diet. I mean, they're like, hey, eat as much as you want, whenever you want. I can't do that, man, because I'm like, no, dude, I still got a goal for what I'm trying to lose. So I still counted all my calories. I was still trying to be under. So I wasn't, I didn't have that issue. And I would just say, and it takes about 2 weeks for your body to catch up to how much dietary fat you're putting into it. So that wasn't an issue for me. One of the things I mentioned before doing the carnivore diet, craziest experience in the world, you do not have highs and lows in your blood sugar. In fact, I don't think I ever once, I got a glucose meter. I don't think I ever once tested my blood sugar and it was like over 100. I don't think that ever happened. And, you know, typically you're going to be between 120 and 140 after you eat a meal. And I was never even over 100. So I literally this morning, I took a blood test. I'll probably have the results back from that next Monday. And I'm just curious to see, you know, what's happened with my cholesterol, what's happened with my A1C. I'm betting my A1C is probably going to be at its lowest level, because a month of basically having no spikes in blood sugar, it's just got to be incredibly low. That's my own personal guess on it. Another really, really weird thing. This is just weird, man. I was telling Jamie about this. I've got I've read all the reports. I've read the books. I've heard from people who've gone on the carnivore diet. People who have autoimmune disorders have amazing results, and their body starts to heal itself. And I have a heel, my left heel. It's the ugliest heel in the world. Like, no one's got a good looking heel, but mine is like, you know, I got the sander, right? Once a week I'd go sand that sucker down, put some foot cream on it, because it's just a nasty heel. And my wife always goes, well, it's because you wear thongs everywhere, and you know, it's all the air and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I don't know, right? All I know is my right foot's fine, my left foot's not.
By the way, for the rest of the world, we call those flip-flops.
Flip-flops, thongs, whatever you want to call it. Technically, I don't wear those. I wear these Chinook sandals, but they're the easiest way to explain it is I got no heel, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding, man. The last 2 weeks, that sucker has healed up. It is like as soft as a baby's butt. Not true, but it's pretty soft. That's awesome. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing in the world. The only thing that's different is my diet. I'm not eating any carbs. And one of the things that I mentioned before, your body puts out very little waste, meaning going poop, right? When you're on the carnivore diet. Like it is the weird, and I'd read all about this, right? I'd read these guys are like, yeah, man, I mean, you might go 2-3 days without having to go to the bathroom. And it's true. And then when you do go, it's hardly anything. Like your body is so absorbing everything from the meat, like it's using all of it, that there's like almost no waste left. It is the weirdest experience in the world.
That's awesome.
But now I got to tell you about my buddy Jethro.
Yeah, tell us, because Jethro was on the same diet, virtually the same type of circumstances.
Same diet. He goes out to ice cream with his family every Saturday as well. So, and this is the part that I was like, man, I gotta tell everyone about this. But, you know, I want to tell it from Jethro's point of view, because this was Jethro's experience here.
Yeah, and I think this is what's going to get everybody on the carnivore diet.
I really do. I really do. So Jethro was telling me that one of the things that he experienced on the carnivore diet was that when he and I'm going to keep this clean, everybody.
It's cool. It's cool. It's cool.
I'm going to keep this clean. But when he and the missus would engage in one-on-one cardio exercise, shall we say?
Yep.
It was as if he was on Viagra.
Yeah.
And just so to give you a little heads up here, Jethro knows what it's like to be on Viagra.
Oh,
so
right.
he's not like making this up. Now, let me tell you the story because this is almost as good as everything else. Jethro,
really?
You might have met Jethro. I don't know if you have, Dan, but Jethro was in the Bivo Inner Circle. The Bivo Inner Circle is something that I used to do with a bunch of pastors. They're what are called bivocational pastors. I mean, they got more than one job. And on this one particular, we do a mastermind call. This one particular mastermind call, every single person on the call had either been on testosterone or was currently on testosterone. And so Jethro was like, wow, man, that's kind of interesting. I think I'm going to get tested and see what my testosterone levels are. Now, for those of you guys who are, maybe not as experienced with all this stuff, basically, really, once you hit 40, like everything starts to go down and your testosterone levels go down. I mean, obviously they're at their highest in your 20s. And so anyway, Jethro takes a testosterone test. And there's basically two tests that they use the most. One is called total testosterone, and the other one's called free testosterone. Your total testosterone, that's the one everyone always looks at. And honestly, his total testosterone, he was right in the middle. I mean, not really low, not really high, just literally right in the middle. His free testosterone, he was extremely low. And I would say that your free testosterone is actually more important than your total testosterone because the free testosterone is the one that's actually available for use. And it was really, really low. And I'm telling you, man, this is how I know frickin' Facebook listens to everything you say. So I'm talking about with Jethro and our other good buddy, Wayne, he's a former bodybuilder, champion bodybuilder, actually, right? He's the guy who's been coaching me personally on losing weight and all that stuff. So being an ex-bodybuilder, I mean, he's all in favor of testosterone and everything else, right? Because he knows all about that stuff. So after we talk about this, no Google searches have been done by either myself or Jethro. All of a sudden, Facebook starts showing ads for testosterone treatment in his ad feed. Mm-hmm. So don't tell me they're not listening to what you're talking about. They're so listening to what you're talking about. So Jethro decides to take up, one of these testosterone doctors. And funny, man, most of them are out of Florida. I don't know what it is about Florida. It's where all the anti-aging clinics are. Testosterone
where all the old
clinics,
people are. So
I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, he goes through, gets additional blood tests done. And these guys got a rig, man. I mean, this is the rig of all rigs. It's a continuity program. They set you up where they send you the testosterone every month, your anastrozole, your HCG. They send you all this stuff every month. And I mean, there are different doctors at different levels, anywhere from $100 to $200 a month. And the doctor, Jethro was telling me that he thinks the doctor is trying to do an upsell. So the doctor says, hey, I'm also going to send you some Viagra tablets. Now, understand that a lot of guys who get on testosterone because they have a low libido. That's a common side effect of having low testosterone. Now, Jethro swears to me up and down that he has no low libido whatsoever. None. Like that isn't his problem. He swears to me that it's his wife who's got the low libido, right? It is not him. I don't know. This is Jethro's story, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But hey, if some doctor is going to send you some Viagra tablets,
give it a shot.
It's from a doctor, right? It's from a doctor.
Let's try this thing out.
So he proceeds to explain to me his experience using Viagra. Now, for a guy who doesn't suffer from ED, the effect of Viagra on him was that when he and the missus were done with their one-on-one cardio exercise, he was still ready to go, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
He was still full attention. You want round two? No problem.
Like cardio one, we're ready for cardio. We're second round.
Let's get some more exercise in here.
Yeah.
So
we're not doing half marathons here.
I'm just saying, right? So
26 point whatever.
So when you don't suffer from ED, apparently, and you take Viagra, it just means, man, you could keep going forever because you're good to go. So what he was explaining to me is that was the exact same effect as the carnivore diet. Huh. When he was done, he was not done, if you know what I'm saying.
That is very interesting.
He was at full attention, ready to round two. Now, he did mention that on the days that he had his carbs, he had his ice cream. On those particular days, it was not as strong an effect, shall we say.
Interesting.
As days where it would have been, days of carnivore diet, no carbs.
That is really interesting.
And it proceeded to last for the entire experiment.
Entirety of the experience, yeah.
It wasn't just a one hit, because the first time it happened, the way he reported it to me was that he was like,
"What's going on?
What? I didn't take anything. What's going on, man?" And it just, okay, I got to test this out again. And he tested it and the way he reports it to me, he didn't get to test it as often as he would have liked, but he tested it as often as the opportunity presented itself.
Yes.
For some one-on-one cardio exercise.
When it doesn't sound like there were any complaints.
There's never been any complaints. The biggest complaint has been from him not getting enough cardio exercise.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
well, Jethro has inadvertently been a part of an experiment that someone should be documenting medically. I'm intrigued.
All I can tell you, man, is if I were about to get married for the first time, I guarantee you I would go straight carnivore diet.
Yeah.
For at least the week leading up. It just, all I can say, man, is that was a side effect that Jethro experienced that he didn't read about in any book, that no one talked about on any interview, but he was pleasantly surprised by the side effect.
Yes. Well said. By the way, I think well explained. I'm sure Jethro and his wife both would approve of how tastefully we've engaged in this explanation.
I want to keep it clean. I wanted to keep it clean.
Put this on.
Yeah.
Well
so
done.
hey,
done.
What can I say, man?
So
that's my biggest takeaway here on the old carnivore diet.
Carnivore diet's a win, clearly.
What can you say?
Maybe more than one win.
Who knows, right?
Clearly.
I mean, for myself, I can say definitely putting on muscle left and right. I was only down maybe 5 pounds total, which in some ways didn't surprise me personally that I only lost about 5 pounds, mainly because, when you've been dieting for a year, it's really hard to lose weight, right? So I personally still have probably about another 20 pounds to go. But it's difficult to lose weight. So what I would say for myself is I could see what is often referred to as a recomping going on. So I'm not necessarily lowering on the scale, but I can tell I'm losing fat and gaining muscle. Mm-hmm. I can tell that because literally all of my clothes are bigger.
Yeah.
But the scale is like I said, it's only down 5 pounds. I would say that if someone was looking to lose weight, there's probably easier ways to do it, but certainly going to a zero carb diet, you're going to drop pounds like crazy. But so that's my report.
And you think about the testosterone increase is genuinely good for a lot of reasons, like your
definitely.
Immunity and everything else. And I know there's a whole issue with a lot of people suffering from low testosterone, and being able to have a natural way to boost it is a pretty cool thing.
Right. Well, and I would personally say that any guy, especially over the age 40, and I mean, it does absolutely affect guys younger. I would tell all of them, get on testosterone. That would be my own personal thing. Like back in the day, our parents, our grandparents, they didn't have what we have today. We have access to this. Like there's a guy in the Bivo Inner Circle who I know you know, Dan, and he and I were talking about it offline, and he goes, I told my wife, I don't care whatever happens. If my insurance no longer covers this, I am paying the money to stay on testosterone. You just feel so much better. It's weird, right? It's just weird.
It's not crazy expensive. I knew a couple of guys that were on it. I think they spent $500 total in a year on it. Like, I mean, it's not stupid money. You know, right. It's like, okay, that's doable. That's not even my beer budget for a year.
The biggest hurdle for most guys, and there's a lot, and I mean, we could do a whole thing on testosterone itself, because I've learned so much over the last year with all the dieting and health related stuff. The biggest hurdle for most guys, because there's lots of different ways that you can get it. I would say your regular doctor, they're going to try and give you the gel, the cream that you put on yourself, and I don't recommend that at all. You got to inject it, right? So you got to get used to sticking yourself with a needle. That is without a doubt the biggest hurdle. Yeah. But then once you're like, yeah, but it doesn't actually hurt. Like you have this mental, it's a needle, right? It's a big ass needle that they give you. And once you're like, wow, it doesn't actually hurt, it's not a big deal, then I would just tell you that's the way to go. 100%. Yeah. That's the best way to go. Good
stuff, man. Way to go, everybody. So I'm glad to hear the report. We did a full-on science experiment here on the From Concealment podcast.
Yeah. What can I say, man? Just doing our part for the greater good.
Way to go, man. Yeah, I know people have been interested in that, so I'm glad we got to do the report today.
I honestly think with that alone, everyone should at least give it a whirl and see if they had the same results as Jethro, because I'd like to hear back. I'd like to hear, was it a unique thing to Jethro, or, is this something that affects other people as well? Yeah.
Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we should probably talk about some of the crazy stuff that's going on right now, man.
Dude, it is a crazy, crazy world. Here in California, we've gone back to the dictator levels. Everything's closed up again. Churches are closed. Gyms are closed. In fact, my gym, and I think I mentioned this, they made us wear masks when we worked out. So when they just rolled over and closed this last time, I was like, that's it. I went out this last week. I'm looking at it right now at my patio. I got my squat rack. I got a bench. I got free weights. I'm like, I'm never going back to the gym. Screw them. I'm done with them.
Yeah. So I feel you, man.
We're back to the dictator in chief.
We've got the same kind of thing where Yeah, man. Well, we're in similar boat here. We're just seeing the mask orders here in Ohio keep going up, and that one's, and I recognize there's one thing for a voluntary thing, but man, I know people who have breathing issues and whatever, and there's just not a lot of nuance to the orders, and I'm like, this is stealing freedom, man, and I'm not happy about it. And then of course we've got what's been going on in Portland, and I thought it would be good for us to address that because it affects all of us. And I wanted to address two different things on it. One, the definition of terrorist in our current law enforcement culture right now. The second issue is we need to address the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, specifically Section 1021. Many of you guys have maybe heard about this, and I just want to point out, just go and look up. I'm going to just encourage people. A lot of things get shared that sound like conspiracy theories that are fully documented, legal, out there. You can just go and look it up. You can look on the .gov website, whatever. I'm just going to recommend, check out, when you get the chance after the show, check out the National Defense Authorization Act. I think it's from 2012. And just fix your eyes on Section 1021. You can Google it if you want. Look at the language of it. because it's affecting what's going on. And so, Pete, do you want to maybe, tell me if I'm saying something wrong here, but if I'm getting it right, the reports are that in Portland, unmarked vehicles like minivans and whatever have been going around, and dudes in full military kit with police patches on, but as we understand, a lot of them are border patrol, but federal agents are nabbing people, throwing them in vans, and jetting out of there. As we understand, they're picking up protesters. It is unclear whether they are violent rioters or just protesters. I'm sure that there's probably a little bit of both, but the language is kind of fuzzy, right? The reports are just a little fuzzy, which to me is another red flag. So we've got that going on. And I've noticed kind of two different types of reactions. One is people are like, well, there's all this terrible stuff going on there. Somebody had to put their foot down, right? We've heard that. And I understand that to a certain extent. I'm not supportive of a lot of the rioting and the whatever. Then we have, in the whole process, though, we're forgetting that, like, hey, we still have a right to due process. There's still a way things have to be done. People have to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. There's a whole process. And when people just disappear and we don't know, normally somebody shows up and arrests you, you can say, well, man, that was, Lorain County Sheriff. That's, Chicago PD. You know who it is. You can make a call and say, so-and-so was arrested. Where are they being held? Right. They can get a lawyer. There's a whole process. Their family can either go and visit them or at least find out what's going on. When a dude who is not properly marked shows up and throws you in a van that has no markings, probably rented from Enterprise, right? We're outside the bounds of what America is supposed to be. Now, I might despise what some of those protesters and rioters stand for, but I'm not okay with anybody getting picked up that way. Even the most vile person, I want to know what's going on, because even the most vile person who's done a heinous crime, I want to make sure that he's tried right so that justice is served, so we can cheer when, they get caught.
Right.
We're running into kind of a shady thing here, and I want to address these two things on it. One, if you have a look at the NDAA, which, by the way, President Obama signed into law, it essentially allows for anybody who has had any connection, and they're real loose with the language, any association with Al-Qaeda or Taliban, or anybody who has been hostile against the United States. And they even say anyone who commits a, quote, belligerent act against the United States or its coalition allies in aid of enemy forces, essentially allows them to be held without law, or without any type of a trial, completely indefinitely, essentially as a war criminal. Right now, most of us, when we hear like, well, yeah, but it's terrorists, man. We don't like terrorists. We don't want terrorists to have rights. Da 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 da. I understand. However, what ends up happening is as soon as we've removed that due process, and then we've used such vague language, now it's anybody who has committed a belligerent act against the United States. Well, what's a belligerent act? Like, they might say that you and I saying that these gun laws are tyrannical is a belligerent act.
Right.
Right. And you might notice that the definition of terrorist, back when you and I were in high school, junior high, a terrorist was somebody who blew up civilians or otherwise caused terror with a heinous act that had nothing to do with warfare. But now, if you look at some of the memos, now a terrorist is someone who questions the narrative related to COVID. A terrorist can be someone, right now, all the boob dudes are being referred to as terrorists. I'm like, no, they haven't done anything. How are you calling this group terrorists? The other thing we're noticing, I'm just kind of making sure we're all understanding this, I don't like Antifa. In fact, I hate most of what they stand for. But you'll notice you got some people that are like, well, hey, man, I would rather us not have fascism. And they might say a couple of things that sound like Antifa. And before you know it, they're thrown in that line, right? Or you have somebody might quote or tweet with the hashtag Black Lives Matter. And most of us can say, yeah, man, we agree that Black Lives Matter. There's also an organization that's pretty Marxist that uses that language. Well, if we conflate the two as the same thing, and we do the same thing with all the Antifa people, we have to recognize They're doing that with all the Boogaloo dudes and all the Second Amendment dudes, and they're throwing us all in these big pots, and all they have to do is say, well, all those guys, they're associated with terrorism. It's made it really, really loose now for them to show up with unmarked federal agents in full military kit and take you away in a van where you're never heard from again. And so I felt like it's just worthwhile for us to acknowledge we have an actual unconstitutional law in place, signed in by President Obama, and now we're seeing that kind of stuff used. Now, right now, we might be like, those freaking Antifas, they suck. And I agree. But as soon as we let somebody walk up and take them away without any due process, we have to recognize that a precedent is being set, and the next time it might be me or it might be my children. And if we've just got to take some time, I'm even encouraging, if we could even just step back and say, even all these people that we see as despicable in the things that they stand for, even the Marxists right now, I want to say, whoa, let's handle this with due process. And if we're going to conflate everybody as a terrorist and then we're going to allow anybody to be taken away for any reason without due process, please don't be in a situation where you're cheering that on. And it's like the old quote where the guy was like, they came for the Jews and I didn't say anything because I wasn't a Jew, and they came for the whatever, and I didn't say anything because I wasn't them. Right now, man, they are coming for Antifa, and I hate Antifa. But the way that they are taking those dudes away, I have to recognize they're going to do to me in another year. And
well, it's funny that you say that, because part of how that so rings true to me is the idea of them setting the precedent, because what we've seen through this whole coronavirus, the First Amendment, freedom of religion, is dead.
Yeah.
I mean, when you got my evil dictator governor who just decides we're taking away church. Oh, you can't sing at church. You can't meet if there's more than 25% of the room full. You can't, and he's doing this over a virus that is not dangerous. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying it's not dangerous. And I'm not saying that people haven't died from it. I'm saying as a whole, it's not dangerous. Yeah. We know this statistically. Yeah. We know it.
Yeah.
He's saying that now. What's going to happen later on, or the next guy who just decides, hey, you know what? We're going to say that this is now dangerous. Whatever it is, maybe it's not health related. Maybe they just don't like the fact that you believe something. And they're going to say, well, we need to stop this. Is that erosion of our freedoms? The whole idea that they can close down private business because they want to? Yeah. You have to have my consent, the consent of the governed. You don't have my consent to do this. I don't agree to this.
We have not given Jack consent for this, right? For crying out loud, show me the mask order that has been signed into a law through a congressional movement, right?
Right.
It's not there. These are all executive orders happening outside the bounds of our, constitutional rights. Even that, we haven't even made real laws over it. We've just got executive orders.
Well, it's kind of like our Constitution only gives us the right to go to war if Congress declares it. Congress hasn't declared war since World War II. And if you notice, we haven't had a clear-cut victory since World War II.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Korea, Vietnam, Persian Gulf I, Persian Gulf II, Afghanistan. There's no clear-cut victory because we've never actually declared war.
Yeah. Well, what did they say, and what did Orwell say in 1984? That the wars were not meant to be won. They're meant to be perpetual. That's not an exact quote, but this is a great time to be reading 1984 and also Brave New World. You read those two together, and man, you'll be like, oh man, talk about calling it. It's crazy. Yeah. So it's just worth noting, because I will acknowledge it's easy for me to just say, well, yeah, but those guys suck. So if they want to take those guys away, they suck anyway. Man, we've got to pay attention to precedents. And I feel like so many times we'll be okay with somebody that we don't like, maybe somebody who's really despicable, not getting due process. You recognize that due process is good, even for me in the case of the bad guy, right? Bad guy gets caught. I want them to walk through every evil thing he did. I want it to be proven. That's part of victims getting their just due, right? So if we're picking up some Antifa guy for burning down a business, I want them to catch him. I want it to be known. I want them to walk through every little bit of court proceeding, and I want him to get nailed for every one of it. That's how justice is supposed to work. And we, biblically, we have a couple of witnesses. We have a whole process for this. Once you take that away, society is over. And so please don't cheer what's happening in Portland right now. Pray for it to come back to some type of actual civil justice here.
Well, I thought it was interesting over this last weekend because, there's all these articles. Trump won't confirm if he'll leave office if he loses the election. I'm like, first of all, y'all are trying to get him to say something. And so when he's not willing to say what you want him to say, now the article is, he won't leave.
Yeah.
It was funny as I was reading that. I was like, you know what, though? If he did decide to stay in office, and I actually worried about that with Obama. He was the first president that I actually worried, is this guy going to actually leave office at the end of his term?
Yeah.
With Trump, first of all, I don't think he even likes being president enough for that. Like, but okay, but let's say he decided not to leave office. I think what scares me the most is I think so many of his followers would cheer that on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you guys are so jacked up. You don't even realize how bad this dude is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would probably just support it. I mean, you would literally support tyranny and a dictator.
It's like a lot of these situations. It reminds me of the Guantanamo Bay situation where people are like, well, they're terrorists. And I'm like, hey, the fact that I don't want terrorists to be tortured does not mean I like terrorists, right? That I care about justice and law and order. I want them to be punished terribly, right? But there's a process for that. Or similar, like when you had the George Floyd murder, and you had a whole bunch of people coming out and saying, like, this dude was awful. He probably was a pretty awful dude. I didn't want him to be murdered by a cop kneeling on his neck. And so we're in this world, though, that if you have any form of, and I don't even think this should count as nuance, but what is called nuance now, where we're like, hey, that guy's bad, but they shouldn't have murdered him, is called nuance. To me, that shouldn't even be nuance. That should just be basic. Like, you arrest a guy, you get him detained. Okay, so he wrote bad checks. It sounds like a shady dude. Like, well, let's make him pay this stuff back. Let's get justice enacted. But when people are like, well, no big deal, like one more guy off the streets, we kneeled on his neck. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Just because it's a bad guy doesn't mean we get to give up doing things the right way. And man, I am deeply concerned with because if they can do that, man, they can do it here.
Right.
And Portland's not ready for it. I'm hoping we're getting ready for it here. And that's why I'm going to tell you, support your local QRF, develop your local QRF, get yourselves ready. I know Leroy and what's his name?
Jethro
are doing their best. Get networked, get connected, talk to people, talk about freedom, man. Try not to scare people, but you know what? I can have a lot of conversation. My wife gets annoyed, but I'll be having conversations where somebody's wearing their masks and the mask falls off and they're like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, oh, don't worry about it, man. It doesn't freak me out. And they're like, oh, I'm glad to hear that because this seems like the biggest load of BS. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, we have the conversation. And it doesn't take much to cite some real legal precedents where you're like, this is not how it's supposed to work, is it? And they're like, no, it's not. Have the freedom conversations. Erode people's love for tyranny just through gentle, winsome conversations. It's what I do with the gospel, man. I tell people the good news of Jesus, but I do it in just natural, relational, kind, communicative ways. And people are like, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Doesn't mean they're all going to come over, but you might be surprised how many people are on the side of freedom that just need somebody to flip that switch for them.
Right.
Where it doesn't take much to be like, yeah, man, like those people in Portland are awful, but also I want this to be handled legally. Don't you want to see justice? Don't you want to see them brought to trial? And isn't it weird that they're scurried away? How do we know that all these guys are bad? And they're like, yeah, man, this is interesting. All it takes is a little bit of conversation for people to start thinking rationally instead of waving their Trump flags or waving their Antifa flags or waving whatever flag it is. Let's take down those flags and let's talk about what real justice is.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's what's on my mind today, man. So everybody check out NDAA section 1021. read up on it, learn about how freedom was already eroded. And then if you want to laugh, check out the Snopes article where they want to try to, they're like, well, it's partly true. And it's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, the Snopes is the biggest joke I think I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all we got. That's all I got today, man.
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate you sharing what you did on that. And a lot of stuff, guys, for us to all think about and realize that, right before we started this, I said the Republic is dead. And unfortunately, we're just seeing like it's all over but the screaming. And you just got to get prepared, man. You got to get prepared because I don't know what's coming next, but it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
If maybe 2 more minutes, I'll maybe mention this. Because I'm as a pastor, the conversations I have with people who you would never think of as the conspiracy theorists, whatever, but they're just looking at what's happening. They're like, what in the world? Like, this is over, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, it is. So 2 things. One, you might be surprised how much freedom-loving people can do with small arms. So just be prepared to defend your home, man. Just be prepared to network with your community. Like, network with your community now. Like, there's some good stuff that can happen in that. Be smart about what you post. You might want to start thinking about using your cell phone less and using social media less. Think about what you can do to fly under the radar, all those kind of things. Here's the other thing. This is my conversation my wife and I have often. We put a lot of hope in the fact that we know the Lord. One of the catechisms I teach my kids relates to like, hey, whether we live or die, we're the Lord's. Like, God has his plan. And my wife is like, we could die tomorrow from coronavirus or from a car wreck or whatever else, but my hope is in the Lord. And so I know this is not directly a Christian podcast, but I'll tell you, if you do not have hope, the only hope you have is that Jesus paid your sin debt. You repent and believe the good news that he died on the cross, he rose from the dead. That means you have hope of eternity, that his kingdom is coming. There is a future hope you can look forward to, because we're starting to see that this world is getting pretty shitty right now.
Right.
There's a lot of good things going on. Don't be distracted from the fact there's great, wonderful things going on, but there's a lot of evil going on. My hope is that whatever happens, I'm with the Lord, and that's good news. So anyway, more on that. If you have any questions, shoot us a Facebook message until we get zucked out of that. But anyway, thought I'd throw that in. There's hope, brothers.
Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time and sharing all that, and we'll be back next week, and we'll actually talk about some guns next week. But
yes.
This week we just had to talk about what was going on right now in the world and carnivore diet. So
that's right, man. All right, you guys take care. By the way, check out learms.net when you get the chance. We got some new classes we're offering. Check it out. All right?
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
You've been listening to the From Concealment podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.